Hi guys, this is Andy.
And this is Andrew.
Welcome to our fourth episode of the Deco Mix. Today our guest is Dave Ross from Tech Asia and the Philippines.
Now, Dave has been around in the technical diving industry for decades. And there's not much that Dave doesn't know about running and organizing technical diving expeditions. What we're going to be looking at today is Dave's expedition to Samar in the southern Philippines and exploring the caves around there. We're going to be looking at some of the logistical issues that Dave has faced. And without further ado, we're going to be welcoming Dave to the Deco Mix. Okay, welcome to the Deco Mix. And Dave, welcome to our Deco Mix here. And we're very happy to have you on board, and we're looking forward to actually hearing what you've got to say. How are you doing down there?
Oh, not too bad, Andy. Yeah, it's having a busy morning, actually. I'm hoping nobody interrupts us while we're talking.
Well, it's a good thing.
I've told them to stay out, and yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me to participate in this. It's going to be an interesting hour, I think.
No, well, it's great to have you on. It's great to have you on for the Deco Mix, and obviously we've known each other for a number of years. You and Andy have known each other for longer.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it. I think probably 15 years or something. Yeah, I think
20 years. Yeah,
20 years almost. Yeah, it's a long time.
20 years.
Yeah,
but it's obviously you're in Portugalera there at the moment, we want to hear what you've got to say, and we know that you have a massively interesting cave exploration project down in Samar. We'd love to hear about that. We'd also love to join it, but timing is an issue.
We'll organise that. All right. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about Samar. I mean, how did it come about? And
all right. Yeah, that's something I was thinking about. Where to start with it when you asked me to join this talk, because really we've got 10 or 11 years of memories to sift through. And of really, really good times and some disasters and things. And it's like, all right, what to talk about? But where it kicked off was, as a dive shop owner, I had the feeling that we should be doing something other than just local diving and teaching to keep tech divers interested, right? We all want to do that. And we had grand plans for Sri Lanka back in 2004 and 5, and that all fell through because of the civil war that came back at that time. So kind of, now what should we do?
Yeah.
And just one of those conversations with, do you know Ralph, who ran the Ralph Rags Liverpool? Yeah, okay. Well, chatting to him, and he'd kind of been everywhere all over the Philippines, and he said, one place I really want to get back to is Samar. And it's like, all right, what's that about? And he started to talk about the things that you can see in the background behind me now.
Yeah.
That's a shot of a dry cave in Samar, and he knew that people had been going there. Teams from Europe had been exploring these dry caves for a long time, and they were huge. And the reasoning, of course, is where there's caves like that, there might be something you can dive. And the idea came together to sort of, let's go and find out. It wasn't that we knew there were wet caves in that area. It's like, oh, well, there might be, so let's go and learn about the island. If I lean over a bit, which way are we going? Yeah, you can see that's me in the foreground of that picture, right? That's a huge cave. That's one of the first
massive
ones.
Wow.
So, yeah, you really could fly a helicopter around inside that. And it goes right through a mountain and comes out the other side. And there are sumps and things inside it that you could dive. But what was happening to us at that time, it was myself and Steve Cox that went down to do that initial trip and have a look. We didn't take any diving gear, we just went. And the fellow that took us around, he was a dry caver. He guided the French and the Italian teams and things. And his idea was to stick us into the areas that he couldn't get through. Which meant like sumps and things which were a kilometre inside this cave. That there was some explorations. He said, "Hey, go, there's some water. Go in there." All right, but that was really hard work, and it was muddy, and there were in some cases very fast flowing underground rivers and things. Not really what we wanted to see. I've got a couple of pictures of that I can show later.
Yeah,
but that's how it began. It's like, okay, there's an island, it's nearly all limestone, it's nearly all national park. It's a beautiful place, but what can we really do as divers? And to get away from that, if anybody's looking for something outdoors to do in the Philippines, like an adventure holiday or something, not necessarily diving, but if you want to go see things like this, it's really quite easy to do. It used to be anyway. before all this happens. Yeah, and the guy in Campbell Logan, Johnny, he's very, very good at guiding people through these things, and you can have a great time if you're that kind of person. If anybody wants to know about that, then shoot me a message and I'll put them in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
He deserves the recognition for opening that up. But we started heading down there in, when was it, 2008, something like that, and initially saw these great big caves, which are beautiful things to see, but not really what we wanted for diving. And how things changed was like after a day, actually in this one, Johnny and I hiked out and we were covered in mud and bat shit and all kinds of, it was a tough day. And he just took us to a little river to wash up before we got back into a Jeep to head back to town. And there was a woman there doing laundry in the river. And the water was coming out of like a little concrete box where they concreted over an actual spring, and it was flowing out of there, and she was washing clothes in it, and I went to have a look, and the water was clear and it was warm. It was nothing like what I'd seen inside the cave. And I asked the guy, like, well, where does this water come from? And he's like, well, I don't know. Why do you care? It's like, it's not a cave. But we managed to get then an understanding of like what we really need to see is springs like that, where you can basically walk up to it and jump in. If the concrete wasn't there, we could have done that. Not great big cave systems where you've got to hike in for 5 kilometers to get to any kind of water. Yeah. And once he kind of understood that, because it was a different thing for him, like I said, he's a dry explorer. Once he got that message, he was out and about and asking questions, and he came up with a huge list of these springs for us to check on the next trip down. And that's really where it started to actually to roll. We began going down with some equipment, and then eventually compressors and tanks and things as well, and figuring out, is it worth carrying on with a proper project here?
That's something I want to hold you there, because I'm really, you have over the years, since I've known you as well, and I'm sure Andy, you've been sort of renowned in your organization of expeditions, right? And this is a prime example of them. I mean, we've been on trips to Sri Lanka. Yeah.
Yes.
And Andy's been on numerous rec trips with you over the years. And what is most important for you about organizing an expedition? I mean, you just said there, right, going back to Samar and taking compressors and tanks and things. That's not easy stuff, right? And this is something that you
you need some resources to be able to do it, and somebody's got to spend some money. And nobody really sponsors this project other than Tech Asia, basically. And Steve Cox is my partner in this venture, so his pockets are deep enough to pay part of the way as well. And I guess Suex have backed us to some degree with providing one good scooter for the project as it got further on. But no, it's self-funding. It helps to have a dive shop, because if I need something, I can just go and get it, right? We need some more tanks. I can pull those out and stick them in the van and do that. Whereas if you don't have that behind you, it would be a lot harder to do it. That's an asset for sure.
But still, Dave, I mean, you cannot just, it's not next door, right? It's down there.
Yeah, you do need to think about that ahead of time, and not forget the O-ring pick and things like that when you load everything up to go down there.
How long in advance do you plan, let's say, an expedition? How long in advance do you ship stuff down there? It's like a month in advance or something? Or?
It's not that bad. We've got gas down there stored now. We've got helium and oxygen sitting in someone's back room in Eastern Samar. But we don't leave things there like compressors. If you did that, it would end up in someone's fishing boat by the time we got back.
Right.
That's what will happen. Right. But if I was to call up a map here, should we try this like share screen adventure?
Yeah, share your screen and bring up the map.
And you'd see how it works.
Let's use this technology.
If I go into a general map, if I share that, is there a map there?
Yeah, we've got a map there. We've got a map. Samar.
Map of the Philippines. All right. So just to put this into context, then we've got Puerto Galera was where the dive shop is in Manila. Everybody will know that, right? Most people arrive. And this is the island that we target, is Samar, which is down on the Pacific coast. So whereas we as divers, we can fly from Manila to Tacloban down here and then just drive up. But the equipment has to go on a boat, then drive all the way through Bicol and on another ferry, and it takes 3 days to get it there.
Wow.
Okay.
And 3 days to get it back, and there's a lot of driving for 2 guys, and we got to do it that way because we need vehicles on the ground when we get there too, right, to get around and see what's what.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave. So the equipment is shipped by boat, and then you drive from.
Yeah, we stick everything. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, we put the compressors and the tanks and everybody's gear that's too heavy to fly. We stick it on a bunker. It's met in Batangas by, we usually use 2 Fortuners. That's enough. Just, you've never seen them so full in all your life. But 2 of those then drive from Batangas through all the way down through Luzon and across to Samar and arrive usually 3 days later. And if
that's just a logistical task in itself, right? I mean,
yeah. Is there another map there now? Yeah.
Wow.
This is the actual island, just to show what's happened over the last few years. Can you see Cap Belogan? This name? All right. Well, that's the provincial capital on the west, which is where we went first. And over time, we checked out probably 25 or 30 locations around there, various types of cave and spring. And a couple were quite good, but most were, you know what, you're familiar with Mexico. Do you get a lot of stuff there where you think it looks really nice and then it just pinches down really quick to nothing? Yeah, right. Like 9 out of 10 do that. And we had a lot of that. We found a couple with diveable cave, but most, there's water coming out of the spring, but you can't get in.
Yeah.
And eventually we shifted over, excuse me, to the East Coast. And the area of main focus is this area where you see Nestors and Veto. That's where the big system is. And we can now stay in this tiny little town of Taft, which is maybe 35 minutes drive every day to get up there.
Sorry, Dave, and the cave you have behind you, where is that location of this? Was it more?
That's Cap Belogan side, somewhere down here, sort of underneath this Concord word.
The dry cave is all in that region, basically, what you mentioned
earlier. The big ones are all over there. That's the ones where the speleologists go and explore. And some of those caves are 30 kilometers long. They go in there and stay in for days and they don't come out. I don't know how they do it, but that's not for me. Maybe they don't now, I don't know.
Yeah.
But over here, you've got more springs. And we were just lucky to be shown that. You know, it's wrong to say we found it. We just had somebody on the ground who said, come and have a look at this. And it turned out good. And there's another area where Concord is here, which is for the future. That's similar, but very deep. But that's something that was uncovered a couple of years ago.
But we're talking in the middle of the jungle here, right? I mean, this is
it's forest. Yeah, I mean, if we go back to maybe I can pull that map that we looked at before. All right, new share. Does that work? Is there a map there now?
Yep. Now we got.
All right. Yeah. So this was actually in 2017, the extent of the cave. I think this one. But yeah, I mean, it's a good satellite photograph, right? It's forest and to some extent farmland, but it's not mountains, not where we are. And what we can do over here, you've got the village and the road, and there's a dirt road going up to Veto here, and you can basically drive right to it. And I'll show you pictures of that later. And that road continues off shot until you get over the top here, and you have to walk about a mile to get to Nestors. But it's not hard if you've got enough porters.
So you have local support built up over the years there.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Actually, you said logistics. That's one of the things that we have to think about is when we're going down there, we've got to get someone to go to the village and say, we'll be down next week. Can you have like 20 guys ready for day one? Because there's a lot of stuff to move into the cave for the first dive, right?
Yeah.
You got 6 people doing big dives, then that's a lot of tanks and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes there's no men in the village. They've all gone off to work on construction somewhere, so you need to get them back and organize it. And some funny things have happened there. Actually, I didn't want to forget this. The last time we went down, which was just over 2 years ago, we tried it just after that, but that plane crash in Manila stopped us. But we called up and sent somebody there to the village, and he got back to me and he said, "Yeah, Dave, I think we've got a problem." Well, what's that? What is it this time? And he said, Nestor, the guy that owns the land where the cave is, he says, "Oh, he's pawned the cave." So what do you mean he's pawned it? So what's going on? No, he got sick and he needed medicine, so he pawned it. It's not his land now. Like, oh, Jesus. And at this point, the vehicles were loaded, and it's like, oh, what are we going to do about this? So it's like, all right, well, how much did he pawn it for? And he came back to me and said, it was 2,500 pesos. It's like $50, right? And says, all right, I'll send you $100 right now. You go and pawn it back and get it. And, I don't know what was wrong with him. He had a hangover and needed some aspirin or something. I'm not sure. But that's just the way things can be down there. And we had people flying internationally, of course, to come and join us. And it's like, maybe we can't go, lads. They've sold the land for a couple of weeks. But it worked out. It came good. But yeah, I mean, there's always some kind of curveball, right? You must have this in Mexico to some extent. It can't be over here. That things can go funny.
I think it's everywhere in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you find you've got a new mayor that you didn't know about and doesn't understand what you're doing, or the officer of the national park has changed and thinks you're looking for gold and these kinds of things. So you can lose a day of diving to that kind of nonsense. And
but at least now they know what you're doing, right? In the beginning, they had no idea.
And it is really good, particularly in this area, because the village guys, they're very handy, right? And they're trained. They're like our boatmen or something. They know exactly how to handle gear. And what to do, and you don't have to. It works pretty smoothly now in most cases.
Yeah,
that's the cave that's had the most focus. And do you want to know how we sort of found it or how it grew?
Yeah.
Okay.
One question I want to ask is, while we got that map up, this is all area that the red line is all area of cave you've mapped in this cave.
That's all pretty accurately surveyed. Yeah.
So in terms of like the distance, how far are we talking here? How far? What's the sort of the length of the cave?
If this was an updated map, which I'm afraid it's not, it's a couple of years old. It's gone a bit further now.
Yeah.
The total system length is, I've got it here. It's 19,883 feet. So 6,060 meters is the whole system. Yeah.
I mean, that's a substantial system.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know of anything longer in Southeast Asia. It's possible there is, and people are being quiet about it, because we were in the beginning when we started to realize this was a good one. We just like shut up for fear that somebody else would go down there and just kind of try and jump in and upset the villagers and get us all thrown out. And we had kind of too much invested in it by that point for that kind of sort of silly thing to happen. Yeah. And there were signs of it. The only other person in that general area at the time was Bruce from Thailand.
Yep.
And he completely understood. And he said, hey, I know exactly where you're coming from. I'm not going to go near it. And he was really professional about that and said, no, that one's yours. It's under exploration. I'm not going to try and mess it up. And so he was great. But you don't know who else is going to go and try. And the local guys are a little bit touchy. There's some long stories in there too, but we've had some issues with them, and it's taken a bit of a while to get access back. And we just didn't want that to happen until we knew what was what.
So is the cave, is it now fully explored? Is it the end of the line here? Or
it's not. No, every one of these lines where they end is still going.
And are there any, I mean, Nestors sink is obviously an exit or entrance.
Let me say. The first, I want to get it right. That's why I interrupted you.
Yeah.
What we found first, or went into first, was this one called Veto.
Yeah.
That may be better. All right, which is a riverhead. And that is a resurgence of the whole system, it turns out. At the time, we had no idea there was a connection. But Veto was one of the first sort of good caves that we found here in diving terms. It's very large inside, much bigger than the visibility, so it's difficult to navigate. But it quite quickly went to 40 meters and then dived down again, not far in. 500-600 feet in, a couple of hundred meters in, it was getting very, very deep indeed. And that's what forced us to go find some helium and get it down there. That was a bit of an effort, but it was done. But because of the way that was going and because of the team we had at the time, exploration sort of stopped there for a bit until we got people like Gideon down, who was obviously to operate in those conditions efficiently, you need people that are quite high level. Yeah. And Stephen Gideon did some big pushes there in a couple of years later. But in the meanwhile, one day when I was sort of sitting on the bank waiting for them to get out of the water, this old guy Nestor came up to me and he said, oh, I've got a cave on my land and I think you might like to see it. So I was like, all right, they're going to be another 2 hours. Let's go and have a look. And we hiked over to this place. And I'd like to get out of this and show you what it looks like.
Yep.
Screen sharing, I'll have to go back to it.
Yep.
Again. Nestors is, that one will do it. This is one of the first shots of going to Nestors, and it's just this puddle, right? It really is only about like 4 or 5 meters across, and that's it. And
that's Ralph and Steve, I guess, right?
That's Ralph and Steve. Yeah, I think
Steve,
in 2010, right? And they
Steve looking very happy there about having to get
right.
Like, should I go in or not?
Nothing. Yeah. And anyway, they went in because we were there already, and the other cave had gone too deep to do anything more with it. And they went in, and they didn't come out for like an hour and a half. The bubbles just disappeared, and off they went. And everybody's, where have they gone? What's going on with that? Because the guys knew there was a hole in the bottom of it, but of course they just swimming in it. That's all.
Yeah.
So like I think they did like a 1,500 foot, like a 500 meter dive on the first try, which that had never happened before. And if I remember rightly, that was it, right? Because we didn't expect that to happen. Then we had no more cave line and had to go home. That was really it. You can't buy cave line in Samar, and it was all in the cave now. So that was a cock up. But that's what Nestors looks like.
Wow.
And whoop, come back.
Yeah.
And on subsequent occasions, you see it looking, more like that. Does that come up with some gear on the platform?
You can see your folder at the moment, but yeah, we can.
Yeah. So the guys, this is the local lads. They built this amazing log dive platform there, and everything goes on that. And that's getting ready for one of the big.
Yeah, open up the picture, Dave.
Open it up. There. Do we have it?
Not yet.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I've done some. It says I'm screen sharing.
We see your folder. Yeah, now we got. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, right. Okay, so yeah, it got a bit more sophisticated since then.
They built a platform, a ladder as well, or something.
There's some steps because it's pretty muddy getting down to that. It's not easy, and what to tell you about this cave, really. I mean, it's just kept on giving, but it's interesting. Every time we get down there, what we have to sort of work with is a very let's stop screen sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll bring this up. Yeah. Is that a picture?
Yes.
Walking to it, right? Okay. So
that's jungle, Dave. In my knowledge.
All right. Yeah. That's when it looks nice. This is how it should be. The actual entrance to the cave is just in the trees ahead of us there, right? That's where Nestors is. And what we find, why we have to be so sort of organized about it, is because the window to go and explore it is really quite small. It's only 3 or 4 months of the year. Not because it's bad weather for the other 8 months. It like really rains from November to about February. And then it takes about 3 months for the cave to clear out because so much water goes through it. It takes that long for it to sort of settle. And so you've then got May, June, July, August while it's dry on the ground, and you get in there and then it starts to rain again. So we've only got sort of a small amount of time when we can really dive it, hence the need to be organized and make sure everything's ready. And this is what it looks like under good conditions. But while we were kind of learning what can happen in the wrong time of year, we ended up with, this is exactly the same place. Can you see that?
Not yet. So you,
yeah.
Wow.
Just a complete bot, right? And we learned that the hard way. This is exactly the same shot you just saw with all the nice green and everything like that. There's the cave in front of us. And it doesn't get like that because water comes down into the valley and messes it up. It gets like that because the cave comes up and floods the valley. So there's so much water pushing through that system in the wet season that it comes up out of its hole and turns the whole area into a big lake, and then it drains back down there as time passes.
Wow.
So it's like that. This is when we saw that, we began to realize like how big of a system it must be. What really would be going on under the ground there.
So Dave, it I assume it connects to the ocean somewhere, right?
Well, it comes up. It comes up. Let's go back to that one. There we go. It comes up at Veto, and then it runs into a surface river.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Then, yeah. And then in the ocean, it runs into that, and then it goes off down to the ocean, 10 or 15 miles to the east. So we got Nestors up here then, and the first thing that was discovered was this passage. Can you see my cursor?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm good, because that was what's now known as the Upstream Passage, which goes up here. The first thing Steve and Ralph dived, and it's still going, except at the end here it turns into it goes into a shaft which has dropped to about 150 feet, about 45 meters, and keeps going down. So you've got sort of 2,000 feet of cave here, and then it suddenly goes deep. It doesn't stop, but it just presents like a headache from a dive standpoint, because to dive that is obviously potentially a pretty big dive.
Yeah,
you'd have to deco completely cleanly right back there in the cave to sort of survive the trip out through this passage.
Correct.
Which is up and down between 10 meters away, right? And so that one, we haven't had the conditions and the support divers to be able to do anything with that yet. But in that rainy weather I just showed you with the mud, one good thing came out of that. Steve and Ralph tried to dive this, and they just got thrown back out of it. And on the way out and ascending, Steve found himself being pulled down, and he had to inflate and stick himself to the ceiling to get out of the cave, which gave the obvious basically explanation for that was there's a downstream passage too, which was found on the next trip, which is all of this. And as this passage grew, it began to go in the direction of Veto, right?
Okay.
And over time, it was felt that, all right, these things might, if we're lucky, link up. And, eventually in 2015, that connection was actually made back here at a depth of about 35 meters. But all of this is shallowish. Like, it's not much of that is deeper than 25 meters, thankfully. So that makes that, it makes that relatively easy to do stuff with. All the deep is just here. There's a section 60, 80 meters, and we don't really go there anymore because there's no need.
Wow.
know what it looks like, but all of this is where it keeps on going. And
so what you said, what depth is it roughly? I mean, just in average?
Say it's a 20-meter dive.
Okay.
Average depth.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That makes
there is a flow. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, hang on just a second. I got something which you may have seen.
I want to go back to your picture with you walking the gear over, because Dave, I know that you're into your CrossFit stuff and you like your fitness and your weights and things. But there's a picture of you carrying the smallest Deco tank there.
Is it?
And everyone else carrying a twin tank. So I really want to know what's going on there, because
what's going on with that? No, I mean that's no. I carry fragile things that we don't want dropped, like cameras and lights and things like that. No, the guys down there are amazing. They're like bulletproof. It doesn't matter what you give them to take. They're just going to make it happen. There's a set of doubles. They'll stick it on their head and they'll walk off, and you don't mess about with them. Yeah. I'll show you. Yeah. I tried to.
This whole exploration of this cave system is quite extensive. It sounds like it's going to keep on going once things open up again.
Yeah.
It's geez.
Yeah, I mean, that's just normal, right? so I'm not going to try and show off.
Yeah.
Race into the jungle. Yeah.
That's fair enough. I'll take
stop messing around with it all.
I'll take the 40 cubic foot stage cylinder as well.
Yeah, we pay those guys for that.
I've got the O2. I'm fine. I'm all right.
Yeah. But no, I mean, we'd like to get back down there, but it's been 2019 early since we last did, because all of this stuff just happened now.
Yeah.
And even within the Philippines, I don't think I could get there, even if I wanted to, let alone bring in international divers right now and organize something. It's just not going to happen.
Not practical.
Hopefully next year, but I'm not holding my breath. But the cave's not going anywhere, right? It's going to be there, and there's a lot more to do in that area as well. There's plenty of things to still get on with. So it's frustrating that we can't do anything with it, but it's.
Well, it is what it is.
There's a lot of people with worse problems than that right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, speaking of the pandemic, obviously you've been, business in Portugal area has been hit, hugely. hugely. What's it sort of like down there at the moment? I mean, obviously Andy and I used to go every other month, pretty much.
Yeah, Porto Galera is one of the lucky ones, really. The Sabang and Puerto are really kind of dead towns. I'd say the population is halved because so many people were here working in resorts and things, but from somewhere else they've managed to escape back or just go back to farming or whatever. And you walk through Sabang in the afternoons, and what used to be really busy, like the middle of a city, it's just, you could fire a gun down the street, not hit anybody. That's a disaster area. But there are 2 or 3 resorts that are doing a good job of getting people down from Manila, and they're busy. And people can't come. All you need is a rapid test and to use private transport. And then you can get in.
So once you're in Manila, you can get down.
Yeah, it's really easy. I go back and forth all the time, really, or whenever I can afford to, because you have to use a private speedboat if you're not sharing it. That's expensive. But if there's half a dozen people, it's nothing. You just do that. So as long as you've got a negative test within 24 hours, just an antigen test, and a booking with a DOT resort, you're good to go. And people they're sick of being stuck in Manila, and a lot of people are coming down that never used to, just because they've got to get out of the city. Yeah, so the signs are right. It's just for Tech Asia we can't do very much because most of our friends and customers are international.
Yeah.
So there's for us, we've had 3 or 4 divers in the last 16 months, something like that. So that's not so good.
That's not good.
No, I mean the saving grace is people buy equipment. The ones that are diving, it's the shop that keeps the diving side of it afloat. Right. So we've stayed open. Nobody's lost their job or anything like that. It's okay. They'd like to be more busy. Boredom is the problem. Like that.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, you've kept yourself busy. We noticed that you've redesigned your website. You've got an online shop, and we'll
everybody's done those things.
We'll have some pictures brought up of your and links to your website as well. So that's really important. And it's been so I know Andy and I, we want to get back down there. I mean, we've got gear with you.
I've just been charging your batteries and things lately.
Scooter batteries that are probably dead now.
Yeah. No, they're not. That's all right. Yeah, it's all good. Your tanks are good to go and everything else. There's things like that. But it just feels like it's such a waste of 2 years, nearly 2 years. And when you could have been doing things and like this project, and lots of people had to cancel courses that wanted to get involved, and it's just what can you say? Like that. But I think once we can open the borders, I think we'll be busy. I'm sure you'll be on a plane pretty quickly to somewhere, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think Hong Kong right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So Hong Kong at the moment is we keep going back and forth for our travel restrictions. So for us, it's not necessarily leaving Hong Kong. It's
what happens when you come back? Yeah.
Coming back. It's if you can get a flight. I mean, Philippines, there's no flights.
No.
And then if you can get a flight, then it's 3 weeks of quarantine. Yeah. Even if you're fully vaccinated and things, it's
it's like if you have to travel, you can probably do it. But if it's a holiday, it's not worth.
No, it's usually a one-way trip. You go one way and you stay for an extended amount of time in that place. It's not just like a week or a weekend. It's just not.
No, that's right. Yeah, I mean, God knows, you could take off, and and by the time you land, the situation's changed, right? It's not worth it just for a diving break right now. It'll come. Yeah.
It'll come.
But as I say, I think we're lucky because we have got Manila near us, and if you're in Alona or Dumaguete or someone like that, they've got nothing going on at all, and that's much, much worse for them down there. I feel sorry for those guys. We're hanging on, but they'll be struggling. Yeah. For a while.
Yeah. So, well, it sounds like you've sort of managed to get something. I mean, there's some people on there.
I mean, it's easy for a small dive shop, right? I've got 4 people working for me, basically. And it's not like I have 80 staff in a resort and it's closed.
Exactly.
Different set of headaches. Yeah. I mean,
but you're so specialized, Dave. That's the thing. I mean, as you said, tech diving, right? I mean, you're in the tech diving world, you're well known, and everybody who goes to Porto Alegre goes to Tech Asia, really. But as you said, it's international divers and very specifically tech diving. It's not the recreational diving crowd.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's great while it's going on, but when they can't travel, it's sort of leaves a bit of a gap. Yeah. It's too bad. Yeah.
And then that's another thing is like, Dave, you are literally, I think, whenever, I mean, Andy and I have been in this industry a long time. You've been in it a lot longer than us.
Probably similar.
I'm not gonna state how long you've been in it, but you've been at the forefront since the 90s, and doing this sort of stuff.
That's when we did our first nitrox courses and things. Were 95 or 6 or something?
95, right? Yeah.
Whenever Alex began things in this country, right? And we jumped on it quick, and it was good. Yeah.
And I think one person who, whenever we travel around the world, and Andy and I have been around the world with different divers and things, and you sort of mentioned technical diving in Asia and particularly the Philippines, I think your name literally comes up. I mean, you've been involved in so many different expeditions, projects, big dives. I think you
if that's true, I'm happy to hear it. I don't catch that myself, but it's this right place, right time, isn't it? Because when we were growing, Hong Kong was still Hong Kong, right? And Manila had a lot of expats, and a lot of people that learned to tech dive at that time were coming to us because there weren't many options. And it's people like yourselves who are still tech diving. Correct. So I guess all of us go back to that. It blew up from that sort of era.
I think a lot of people met at Tech Asia.
A lot of you did and still dive together, right? Which is really nice.
Yeah. Yes.
I get that when people go off to other areas and things, they run into people that they know from Asia, from us, and from other parts of Asia, which must be good. Hopefully.
I mean, we ran into Steve in Florida, right, Andy?
Yes, we were in Florida. Yes,
when we were in Florida, and we know Steve is obviously a long-term friend of yours, and diving with you for many years. And obviously, the Samar project, he's key in that.
Yeah, he's our sort of project director for that, because the things he does now, right, are just off the charts, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so the experience that he's able to bring to us makes things just work so much better when everything comes together.
So going back to the cave a little bit, Dave. Yeah. So you said about you need experienced divers. I mean, looking at the cave, definitely you need, but do you also have some people that are less experienced and how do you?
That's a good question. That's one of the things I thought I should mention is as to how the team comes together. Because given the things that we've looked at, right, it's difficult to get down there, and you don't want to waste any time when you do, because it's so hard to put everything together. So it makes it difficult to have what you would call newer divers, because you don't really have a lot of time to spend orienting them to conditions and things. When you get down there, you've got to get straight into the cave and go in and start repairing lines and things from the last typhoon season where they've all been ripped out, and spend a day or two of setup, then hopefully 2 or 3 days of exploring, and then it's nearly time to tidy up and get back. All that said, we've been able to do it better in recent years, and we do want to build the team up to have more people, so there are more people to call on if the key people are not available. If you can't get Gideon or Jerry and Sue from Korea, then you don't have a project anymore, and it'd be nice to have some other people that could step up. And
so what prereq would you say? What do people? I mean, let's assume people listening to this podcast say, this is exactly what I want to do. How do I train for this, and how long in advance? I mean, do I need 2 years to build up to be a support diver or something, or how do you get involved in this project? I mean, I think that's what people always want to understand and know.
All right. I think everybody that we've drawn in, apart from the very early days when it was Steve and Ralph and one or two others, but as things have got more complex, people need to be something like GUE Cave 2 or equivalent, and able to survey, or someone that we think can learn to do that pretty quickly. So to have some time in caves where you're able to go on and learn new stuff, and used to operating in mucky conditions too, because the viz isn't usually very good, right? It's about 5 meters. And if you're scootering thousands of feet back and trying to make a map at the same time, that requires a bit of, enough free circuits in your brain to be able to do the job and still kind of stay safe. So there's that. But we do have some simple stuff where people at a lower level can get used to it. if they're living in this country and are able to sort of join each time. And as long as they're not expecting to be diving every day, we'll get them in when we can and let them build up to it gradually. It's very much a support role, but you kind of got to be prepared to go into it that way. Partly safety and partly the actual exploration dives need people that can produce accurate results. You know, they have to go to those divers to get the job done. You know, otherwise you just went down there for nothing.
But honestly, I think people are also interested just to support it and just to be there and participate and understand and learn. I mean, not everybody wants to be the push diver that, you know, lays the line another 2,000 feet or something. It's
Yeah, well, actually, apart from Nestors, the big cave, Cassili system, there's a few other places where there are caves we've just found, and you can be exploring within 300 or 400 feet of the entrance. So if what we could and sometimes do is just focus a project on those newer things, depending on the divers we can get, because then, you know, it's not that committed. You know, most people can manage that, and it's not such a big deal if they come out with all strange data to go back and do it again. So, you know, luckily there's another area a little bit south of where we were talking about just now, where things are a lot more simple at the moment. You know, obviously those things will probably grow. We hope they do, but that is one of the goals, is to keep finding new areas if we can, where people can kind of cut their teeth and get used to it. And
it'd be nice to have,
get
like,
used to a little bit exploring
different caves, right? I mean, if you can bring this together, and, you know, within the window you mentioned, like these 3 months at the time, you can even go down with 2 teams, one team in cave A, one team in cave B or something. I mean,
that's been a thought as well. It's just a question of
organizing.
It's a lot more stuff would have to go down. It would. And people that could help us on the ground, because you do need a local person to interact with everybody you've got to talk to, landowners, barangay captains, and this, that, the other, and make sure stuff happens. And so we could do it. Yeah, it could be done, but it hasn't happened yet that we've been operating 2 different locations.
No, I mean, it's easier said than done. I totally understand that. Also, financially, you need to people, as you said, financial is always something. These projects are not, you know, no big sponsor that just pays for it. It's financial support by
it's a lot easier now that divers pay their own way. I mean, and it's actually not that expensive. I mean, once you're there, you tend to spend about $100 a day, and that's everything. That's your food and your, you know, because there's not much food, right? So that's why. That's food, diving expenses, transport, the whole thing. You know, the big expense is renting the vehicles to get everything down there, but that divided up, 5 or 6 people, $110 a day for exploration diving. It's all right.
That's all right.
Yeah.
And I think Andy's hit the nail on the head there. It's really, you know, people listening to this, hopefully, you know, they're sort of thinking, hey, here's a project. I want to get involved in this, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to introduce these projects around Southeast Asia, around the world, what's going on, what people are doing, especially during this time when we're all, you know, without travel, sort of, you know, when this all does hopefully relax in the future, what do we get involved in? And these are the things. And I think, you know, people have got to realize that these are not certain things that are only accessible for people that are highly trained. I mean, you got to be highly trained, of course, but there is a pathway for people that are sitting there with perhaps they're you know, they're an advanced nitrox diver, or they're a GUE fundamentals diver, and they're looking at thinking, how do I get into, do I go Tech 1, or do I do Cave 1? Do I do Deco procedures or something like that? And do I do intro to cave, cavern, and things like that? And there's a pathway, right? And you don't have to be, we really do believe in the team ethos here. And it's like, you don't have to be the push diver, right? You're contributing to it.
It's good. That has to be understood, right? And you might not be doing very much on your first trip down there, but it's part of the process. It has to be that way sometimes.
You've got to learn, right? You've got to go through that.
Everybody has a good temperament for when things do go wrong. And, to start with, the things you mentioned, GUE is a good place to start for picking divers, but it's no guarantee. I mean, it helps because of standardized skills and so forth, and generally a team mindset. But, you know, you would still like to get to know people pretty well before actually going all the way there, you know.
I think people have got to, especially for a project like yours down there, people have got to have a particular mindset that, you know, we see all these pictures of the caves in Florida and Mexico where it just opens up into massive cavernous spaces. You've got endless visibility out there. You've got to have this mindset that you're gonna rough it down there, right?
We're always happy to get back to Manila for a restaurant and get away from the bugs.
There's a lot of bugs down there, and the visibility is not going to be fantastic all the time, right? You might have 5-6 meters, but it's the reward of something that is bigger, and you know, mapping something out that you've surveyed quite an extensive system there. From nothing, right?
It's been very exciting to watch that grow each time, and it is, and it's ours, right? It's not something that anybody else has been in before. It's like it's quite a personal thing, and people are always very happy to be in it, and particularly the guys that are good at finding new passage and able to name it, and you know, it's special that way. And we've got some people that are very good at that. So we try and keep it. It's the Asian Karst Exploration Project, right? So it's aimed to give opportunities to people from the region, but we've tended to try and also incorporate one sort of guest diver each big trip, and that will usually be somebody from the WKPP, or Sandro's been from Suex. We've had Casey and David and John Rose and people over. So, you know, one trip a year has somebody like that, and the rest of the time is kind of dedicated to trying to get people from around here to get more involved.
And that's really great. That's really, I mean, it's something that is, I know, like we've said it before, I've said it before, I'd love to get involved with it. It's a timing thing. You know, there's a narrow window, and, you know, are you available? Are you not available? That's the typically, if you're thinking in those terms, there's usually one trip late May when we can be really quite sure of conditions, and one trip in middle of August, and that seems to work well for the people and the things that we have to do. So, you know, I don't know what your calendars are like for, you know, in any given year, a normal year, but those are the times when we can kind of do something with it. You know, that's the time to leave a little bit open. And it's good for anything up to about 6 divers. More than that, we can't really fill tanks for and deal with 2 vehicles. So
do you use
sometimes there's a waiting list.
Is it all open circuit, or is it a closed circuit, or a combination of both?
Fair point. There's in Veto, where it went deep, it was rebreather for a while for one trip, and that was just depth. And they used RB80s because that's what the teams use already. And also what we often do is just leave the stuff in the forest overnight, right? And you can leave doubles, and you can leave an RB80 sitting under a tree and just go away and come back in the morning and it'll still work. You might not want to do that with something with sophisticated electronics, you know, full of ants and whatever else, because it's a hassle to carry stuff in and out of there. You know, if it's all still full of gas, then leave it there. And if it's open circuit, it's doubles diving with stages, and you just dive the stages and leave the doubles full. And again, that's just easy on the filling, and it's safe in the cave, and the doubles can stay there from the start of the project to the end. We just take the backup lights off them, so they don't disappear into someone's pocket. But nobody's going in there at night time. Leave it there. And so stage diving, scooters are essential now because of the distance. And otherwise just nitrox. The only reason to use helium in Nestors is just to get the tanks neutral. It's shallow, but sometimes the stages get like 21-35 in just to make them float better during transit. It's not. Sounds a bit extravagant.
So how narrow is the cave? Actually, Dave, one question: do you have a shot from the cave inside or something?
I've got some bits and pieces of video and things that I can probably send you later.
Perfect. Yes.
But in most places, 2 people can scooter through it side by side. You can turn around and stuff. There's little pinch points and the odd restriction and things, but there's been nothing in that big system that someone can't get through with 2 scooters and 3 stages, and wriggle around a bit and pop out the other side, and then you're on your way again. So it's big enough for that. Some of the small caves we found more lately do pinch down pretty tight, and could go for that's something for a side mount diver to do, but in the big cave, no need. It's easy with.
But you
So
besides
yeah.
besides the sink and the river mouth, there's no other exit or entrance, right?
Yeah, there is.
There is.
Let me
Okay.
have a quick look.
We
Yeah,
didn't finish this earlier. I just we're curious because, I mean,
yeah,
as you said, if you go distance, it would be nice to have another entrance closer to where you're going, obviously.
yeah. I'm just trying to find the way to do this again now. Share screen. Have we got a map again coming up?
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. There is another way in, we think. If we go out to this kind of area, where am I pointing now?
Yes.
Yep.
You reminded me, years ago, I hiked out there with somebody, with a guide to have a look. And there's something there. It's like a shaft goes down about, it's a big pit, about 30, 40 feet deep, 10, 12 meters. And there's a cave at the bottom of it. And I just GPSed it and kept it in mind. And then we realized as this survey progressed that the cave basically went right underneath it. And in the area where it does, you can see coconut husks and things inside the cave that probably fell in through that pit.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is another way in there. It's not a very practical one to use to get further out here, but it's kind of nice to know where it is. If you ever got stuck down there for some reason, had to get out of the water, you could probably do it. And you might be sat there all night, but that's better than some of the alternatives, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
Sat and fresh air.
yeah, and there are places where this does come up very, very shallow, and there's probably similar situations. But that's
Do you
one.
see roots of trees or something, I assume?
Yeah, it can happen. Yeah, and there's debris and things in there that gets flushed into the cave, like I say, coconuts and branches and things like that.
Yeah.
But this end, well, both of these ends here, they're just heading off towards high ground to the hills. That's where all the water comes from. And the passages back here are really, really clean in places. And they're great big scalloped, carved out sections there where clearly there's tremendous flow through there. We think this is the main source of all the water comes from this direction.
So you're saying flow, we're talking really about proper flow?
Yeah, in the rainy season. Yeah, and it's sufficient to come and fill up the valley, right? It raises the water table and everything hugely.
Wow.
Yeah, you can completely forget about it at that time. It just turns the area into
mud.
Forget about it. Yeah. It's and by the time we get there in May, that's all stopped, and there really isn't any flow that you can detect.
Right.
So that makes it, basically safe to dive anywhere. And also, if it rains all night, it doesn't change the cave, right? The cave takes a couple of months to respond to the weather. So it's actually pretty safe in that regard too. And you get bad weather while you're down there, it's not going to suddenly turn it into something that's a problem to be diving. It will stay the same for weeks before that affects it, which is comforting. Yeah. So there's...
And Dave, last question. All freshwater, I assume?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, they drink it. Kids come to the side of the spring and pull out a bucket and off they go and like that. And there's freshwater prawns and things in it, and they're fishing for them and those types of things. Yeah, there's some stuff in there. Yeah, like that. But yeah, freshwater cave. Yeah. They all are. I think there's one or two near the ocean which are a little bit tidal, but we haven't really spent much time on those. Yeah, another area.
That's for another area, another time.
It is, yeah. There's too much to do, really. I wish we could be there more often, but doesn't work that way. Doesn't work.
Like Samar?
Yeah, well, yeah. Again, it'll be a short season, but it's been a thought. But again, it's back to this thing of once you've had divers in that cave for a week, it gets quite silty because the flow is so slow it doesn't clean up. So you've only got a certain amount of time when it's practical, and by the end of the week, it's even with decent divers in there, they can't help it. Muck comes up. It gets different. Yeah. But I'd like to. I wouldn't want to spend too much time down there. It's a little bit too rural. After I think 10 days was the longest trip, and that was enough. Right? That was.
You're looking for good food. You're looking for
on a plane and back out. Yeah, that was very much in mind. Yeah. So, well, you'll see. Yeah, we'll work it out.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I think, mate, that's pretty much all we've got time for today. I mean, it's been absolutely amazing talking to you and listening to you.
It goes quick, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does.
It goes really quick. And
yeah, it would have been better if I knew how to share the screen more.
Oh, mate, you know, it's one of those things. It's technology. We've learned how to use it the past 18 months, but I think we've.
That's right. It's technology I don't rely on that much here when I'm just in PG. Yeah, it's good to see you, actually. Yeah,
it's been good to see you. Yeah. And then, mate, it's been really good to talk to you and listen to your project in Samar. And we do hope we can get back down there to Port Galera at some point. And
yeah, that's the first step, isn't it? Yeah. Get a holiday in. Yeah. Well, you've got business to attend to on the other side of the world as well, haven't you? How's Kelvin? Okay. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Kel's good. Kel's good over there. I think everybody's trouble is it's the same within your own sort of country. Generally, you're okay. It's just when you're involved in anything that's external,
move around.
You know, there's no the movement's not there anymore, right? I mean, gone are the days at the moment where we can pop to see you for a long weekend and go.
Frustrating.
Yeah, we'll do one day of diving.
It really was like that, wasn't it? Yeah.
You know, just
exactly. Yeah, it'll come back. Yeah.
It'll come. It'll come.
It will. Yeah. But, we'll still be here. I guarantee.
We're still young.
Yeah.
But we very much thank you for being on, and of course
thanks for having me here.
When things brighten up and things are back to normal, or as near as normal as we can get, then we'll of course have you back on and find out how that project's going on, if you've managed to get down there again. Yeah, well, we're trying for next year. We're thinking about it already. So, yeah. But there's other things to do too. Got to get the dive shop running as well. So many things. Anyway, but I guess we'll keep in touch. Yeah, let's keep in touch. Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah, nice to chat. Dave.